Coming up on Outlook, Olympic athlete Bruce Jenner's recent public affirmation of his efforts to change genders has sparked a national conversation about such sensitive issues. How would you rate your multicultural competencies? We're going to explore that issue. And later in the program, we're going to meet a WKU graduate student whose studies came a little too close to home. Outlook is next. Hello and welcome to this week's edition of Outlook. I'm Barbara Deeb. We're glad you joined us. Living on the new Madrid Fault, as we do here in Kentucky, we have to be reminded, or we should think often, about the fact that we inhabit a living planet. Earthquakes are a reality and could be a possibility. Well, we've got an interesting story for you today. This is the story of how one WKU graduate student who's studying geography, she comes from Nepal. Recently, that education came a little too close to home. We're going to share that story as we welcome to the program, and I want to say your name correctly, Indu Baturai. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Welcome to the program.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for being here. In addition, we are joined by Dr. Nahid Ghani, who is also with WKU's Geography and Geology Department. Thank you. So you are here studying as a graduate student under Dr. Ghani.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So I was like always into environment, into geology, how the earth was formed, and since I'm in Nepal, like Nepal geology always fascinated me, and I underwent like through this WKU profile, and I knew Dr. Ghani was working in Nepal, and I was like very interested to work with her in this project. So I came here to learn more about Nepal's geology, how vulnerable the Nepal is, and in the faults and folds, and how active is the tectonic.
Those tectonic plates.
Yeah.
We've talked about that on this show. So before we go any further, help us get a sense, okay? Mm-hmm. On April 25th, a 7.8 on the Richter scale earthquake hit Nepal, Kathmandu in particular, which is where you're from.
Yeah.
But help us understand, and please chime in here, when we talk about Nepal, people may not have a sense of what the region is like, but the Himalayan mountains are there. It's in the Himalayas. Give our audience a sense of what it looks like.
Nepal has lands from low elevation to the higher elevation, like Mount Everest. Everyone knows that.
And we're talking how high?
Yeah, Mount Everest is 4,848 meters high. That's a lot, and there are lots of mountains that are highest than like 8,000 meters. So these mountains are formed by the collision of two plates, that is Indian plate and Indian subcontinent, about 55 million years ago. And
55 million years ago?
Yeah.
So these are the plates that have formed.
That collided that way in those time, and then now you could see the mountains rising. There are different elevated mountains. I mean, there are higher Himalayas, there are lesser Himalayas, and the Shivaliks, and there are different faults present in these areas. So there are 4 different faults, and I'm actually studying on the frontal, like on one fault. Basically, it's a main frontal thrust, and so it's quite interesting. Like this earthquake is very much helping me to learn more about it, inspiring me to learn more about Nepal, and so.
Oh, which is, we have something we refer to as an irony, a great irony, that you would come to study in the United States, and you're studying the very thing that is occurring in your home country.
Yeah.
So she referenced the Himalayas. But what people may also not realize about where you come from in Nepal, very remote.
Yes, I mean, it's very irony for her that for Indu, while coming here, she has to learn how important her studies are in a very brutal way, that she has to deal with these earthquakes on the faults that generate this earthquake. So faults are usually breaks in the rocks, and those rocks in the Himalayas are already broken. So that means when the India is colliding with China like this, and it is going underneath China. So in that collision zone, we are looking at the fractures in the rocks. And over like millions of years, those rocks are accumulating energy. So those energy, once it gets, the rock no longer can handle those energy, it will release. So those earthquakes are caused by the sudden release in energy. And the way that India is slamming down under China right now, or Eurasia, it is like 2 inches per year.
Which doesn't sound like a lot, right?
No.
2 inches
and
per year?
you know, our fingernails grow about the same rate per year, which is very, very low, but in geologically speaking, it is a very fast rate that India is colliding with Eurasia and generating these mega thrust faults. So these are large scale fractures that are
Mega thrust is what they call those?
yes, yeah.
Okay.
And the earthquake, the 7.8 magnitude of earthquake happened is in one of those fault, one of those fracture zone in between these two continents.
I have a question. Now, we hear about the Richter scale, which is how one measures the intensity. Is it the intensity of an earthquake?
Yes, Richter scale is actually when we measure the magnitude of earthquake, how large the size, actually is the size of the earthquake. But intensity, there is another scale that we use, the earthquake, the seismologists use, which is called the Mercalli scale. And this earthquake has an intensity of around 9, which is violent.
So what is the scale? What's the cap? What's the maximum?
It's 10.
Oh, so this was a 9.
Yeah, it is a 9, but in 1934, the earthquake that happened in Nepal, it is around the same magnitude, I think 7.8 to 8 probably, but it has an intensity of 10, which is extreme.
Extreme, no kidding. So the reason that we've invited these women here to talk about this is because when we said in the introduction the irony of the fact that you're studying with WKU's Geography and Geology Department, and you're studying in particular what's happening in Nepal, your home country. You've been here 4 months, you get here, and then when did you get the news that the earthquake had struck at your home in Nepal?
I actually was sleeping when I got a call from my brother. First I missed a call. He never calls me at night, so when I called him back, and then he was so worried. He said like earthquake was very large and very huge in Nepal, and then he was outside Kathmandu Valley that day, and he couldn't get in touch with my mom and dad, and then it was very hard moment. Like I was constantly trying to get in touch with my mom and dad, and my brother was too concerned, like if my dad and mom are okay or not.
Survived,
so it was a difficult moment. So it was just few minutes after the earthquake happened, I got a call, and I thoroughly checked the Facebook and all the social media, and constantly there were so many tweets and so many status on the earthquake of Nepal. So it was really horrifying. Yeah.
There, at present time, more than 7,500 people lost their lives as a result of the earthquake, April 25th. So when did you get the news that your parents were okay? When did you find out?
Yeah, I found out after 6 hours.
Oh.
So it
6 hours?
6 hours. I couldn't sleep whole night. So it was very sad moment for me.
Oh, I can't even imagine. So who called?
Actually, my brother called me later on. I couldn't sleep. Actually, I was going through the Facebook, and if some relatives of mine could get in touch with my parents, then actually my friends and my family, and then everyone, I was constantly calling them to talk, ask about my family. So it was.
So then you get the call, and your brother says,
yeah, my mom and dad is okay, and then I couldn't speak to them, but at least he told they are okay. Then it was fine. Like it was. I could sleep, and then I had work to do early morning. I woke up.
And so, but you had the weight of the burden was
Yeah.
lifted off your shoulder. Yes, at that
Exactly.
point. So now comes the aftermath. Okay, there are things called aftershocks following an earthquake, and in this instance, you come from India,
I came from Bangladesh.
Bangladesh.
Yes.
Okay, but you were saying that your mother,
Yes.
her was feeling.
It's on the Saturday, same Saturdays, and my mom, actually all of my family member, they felt the shaking in their building, and then immediately they thought, oh, it's something earthquakes, and they have to evacuate from the building. But it's still like our Dhaka is so densely populated.
Which is
that
the city that you're
yes,
from?
it is the capital of Bangladesh, and every building, so we have all tall building because of the dense population, and everyone has to live in those buildings, and my mom evacuated, but she's still like, there's no way to go this small road that I have to stand when there's
So in other
this
words, you come
shaking.
out of this big tall building, but guess what? You walk outside, the earth is shaking, and there's another tall building next
Yes,
door.
yeah. So it's now like in Nepal, this is one of the reason like more than 50% people are now urbanized. So everyone is looking for good living, job, and so people are so urbanized like in Kathmandu. I went there last years, and for collecting some field data from the Himalayas, and
Field data.
yeah, and I have you live in the hotel that is completely demolished. So I
That
heard
no
that
longer-
hotel,
yes,
and
no
some of the
longer
roads are
exists.
so narrow, and the alleys are so narrow, even a small car can't go in there. So it is so difficult for
People just don't realize, yes, what we're
yeah,
talking
for the
about
rescue
here.
people, like if something happens, firefighter, how they can go in there and rescue people.
Because they just can't even access it, which
Yeah.
now is what the problem is, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's getting clean, fresh drinking water to people so
Yeah.
that they can survive, so that they don't become dehydrated, and then medical supplies.
Yeah, exactly.
So what have you
Yeah.
heard from your parents on how that's going?
My brother is acting as a volunteer, and he will be going to the remote place tomorrow, to the rural areas where the earthquake hit hardest, like kind of epicenter. So and it's in the city area in Kathmandu, like people are getting all the facilities nowadays, but in the rural area they don't even have a place to stay, a good food. So the relief materials are now focused to the rural areas, and
The more rural,
yeah.
yes.
So
It's good to know.
I'm glad that everyone, like even a simple citizen is acting as a volunteer and working in, like they are willing to work.
People are
So, yeah.
stepping up, yes,
Yeah,
because they see
exactly.
the damage and the devastation. If you're just joining us, we're talking about with this lovely young lady who comes from Nepal, who is studying geography and geology at Western Kentucky University, and yet whose family was affected by the April 25th earthquake there in Nepal. Dr. Ghani, just put it in perspective for our viewers, if you will. We talk about this earthquake that happened a world away. If you're living and you're watching this, you think, Nepal, I don't know where that is. Why do I care about this? But we need to look at this living planet, don't we?
Sure. I mean, that's a great question, and actually it's very important that we will understand what are the other places around the world that is vulnerable to this type of large-scale earthquake. For Nepal, this one came after 81 years, the last time in 1934 earthquake, which is again on the same fracture zone, same fault system. But for example, in California, we have this San Andreas fault, which is also a place of this type of extreme earthquake. And there is a seismic gap right now in California after the 1906 earthquake. So that place is right now the most vulnerable. So it is overdue for a major earthquake. But having said that, the California earthquake, we also have seismic zone around Kentucky, which is the New Madrid seismic zone, Ubash Valley seismic zone, which is further north from us. And in New Madrid seismic zone, so it's not like in the plate boundaries where the San Andreas fault is. So it is within the continent itself. So if there is a large earthquake occurs in San Andreas fault versus a large earthquake occurs in the New Madrid seismic zone, it will affect more the intensity of this New Madrid earthquake will be longer or much more intense than the San Andreas fault. Ooh. The reason because the crust below the surface is much colder in here within the continent than in the plate boundaries.
There you go. See, now we got a geography and a geology lesson there too. But thank you for sharing that story and enlightening us on that.
It's my pleasure.
And Indu, we wish you success with your family, and you'll get to go home back to Nepal in a year.
I hope. Hopefully, I'll be going next year.
Okay, and we wish them well. And we're going to put up, you can donate to the Red Cross if you want to help the effort.
Yeah, exactly. And me and some of the other Nepali friends are going to organize a fundraising program integrating with International Students Office. So hopefully next week we'll be doing the fundraising program, and then it would be easier for all the students. Like there won't be any confusions like where to donate, if whether my money goes to the victims or not. So we are actually searching the best place to donate. So we're working on that.
So people can make a difference.
Yeah, exactly.
They can make a difference. Thank you so much, and thank you so much for sharing.
My pleasure.
Don't go away. When Outlook continues, we're going to test your multicultural competencies. Dr. Monica Burke's going to join us. Stay with us. Hello and welcome back to Outlook. I'm Barbara Deeb. Well, equality and freedom, isn't that what America's all about? But our sometimes myopic view of the world around us presents a challenge, especially to our diverse and great nation. You know, with recent race relations heating up, national debates over same-sex marriage, a part of the domestic discourse, how do we broach the conversation of cultural diversity? Has it changed? We're going to talk about that as we welcome to the program Dr. Monica Galloway Burke, who works with Western Kentucky University. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
I talk about has it changed, but let's define it first. What are we talking about when we say cultural diversity? What does that mean?
Diversity basically means differences and similarities that we have and the tensions that are associated with it. Diversity within itself is not a bad thing. It's when we start assigning values to those diverse labels for gender and race, language, marital status, and we start assigning values to one is good or one is bad or one is valued, one should be devalued. That's when diversity becomes a huge issue in our nation.
You know, they talked about, ethnographers, about the melting pot. Yes. And how at one point we had this melting pot when we were having a lot of immigrants coming in, and we wanted them to assimilate. We wanted them to be Americans, okay? And that didn't happen. You know, a lot of people stuck to their cultures and brought the beauty of the diversity with it. So is that a myopic way to look at that there was a melting pot?
Yes, most people prefer to say it's mosaic than
a
melting pot.
Yeah.
That everyone brings something to it and makes it beautiful. So it's more of a acculturation where a person can keep their own culture but still contribute to society and offer their culture to the new society, which again makes life interesting.
Oh yes, how boring it would be if we were all the same, wouldn't
True.
it be? Now, we talked about Bruce Jenner, Olympian Bruce Jenner, who recently came out and talked about the fact that he is, looking at switching genders.
Yes.
And it was a beautiful, poignant interview that he did when he revealed so much of his life. But it's got nationally people are talking about it, and I think, and one of the reasons I wanted to have you here is, I don't know that we talk about it in the right way, because there probably is a right way to talk about it and a wrong way to talk about it, or maybe we shouldn't talk about it. Do you have an opinion on that?
I do. I think that difficult dialogue are just one of those things that we have to do, and it requires that we're honest with ourselves. And when it comes to transgender person, we have to first be knowledgeable about what that really is. And I've had a lot of people since the interview stop me and ask me, can you just briefly explain what it is? And so it's difficult to comprehend sometimes a person who's not, informed about it or around it. But it's basically when it's an umbrella term for a person who's identifies their gender not with the one they were assigned with at birth.
So biologically, I may have been born a female, but maybe I don't relate to that gender as
Correct.
my being.
Yes.
Okay.
So it's a matter of femaleness and maleness. So as a female, you notice, I feel like I'm female, I dress this way, I behave this way as a female. But that person may be a different assigned sex at birth, but they may feel that they're the opposite in terms of their identity, in terms of their gender. And so we have to have a conversation with that. It doesn't mean that person is, what I get all the time is that person gay. No, that's sexual orientation. That's different from gender identity and gender expression.
Okay.
A person can be a transgender individual and not be gay.
Okay, okay. So see, there is a lot of misunderstanding and myths surrounding this. And then I hear a lot people asking, so are they cross-dressers? Which is a very different thing as well.
It is. Since transgender is an umbrella term, cross-dressers fall within that, but it's different from someone who's transsexual or someone who decides they want to actually transition from male to female or male to female or male to female.
Okay, so that one can be one without being the other.
Correct.
Yes. So in your opinion, I mean, this is what you teach, this is what you know. There is a lot of misunderstanding, isn't there?
Very much so.
And is that just because people are fearful and don't ask the questions, or is it because they don't know what questions to ask?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think it's becoming more a part of our conversation in the United States because social media has put it out there a lot. But it's been around forever. But we have never had an opportunity to have those conversations about sex and gender in general, including gender roles and gender expectations and gender identity. But now we have to, and with new conversations come confusion. And so that's what's happening. I hear a lot of people saying, I don't understand. I don't understand it. But the best way to understand it is develop what you talked about earlier, your cultural competence.
And how can we, as citizens, as human beings, you know, because it's multi-generational as well.
Yes.
You know, what our norm was, may not be what the world's norm is. So how does one get to that place? How can we do a better job at our cultural competencies?
Cultural competence involves our interactions and communication with people who are different from us in some sense. Their backgrounds are culture. And the first things that we have to understand is awareness. And that's awareness of ourselves and our own biases, our stereotypes in our own culture, and then our attitudes toward those backgrounds and cultures. So we have to take a hard, long look at ourselves and see where we fall on the cultural competence scale. And that's difficult for people when you ask them, you know, what did you believe growing up? Because the people who influence us are the people we love, and that's where we get our ideas about our cultural competence and our belief system. So it's kind of a challenging thing to ask someone, you know, how do you feel about different races or gender, or how do you feel about language, and those things, and citizenship in the United States, and those are hot button topics.
You bet.
And so we have to basically take a stance on those as well. And then the second part would be our knowledge, being willing to learn and be open to learning. And then the third part would be skills, practicing, actually treating people accordingly. Someone who identifies as a transgender individual, if they want to use a pronoun that's opposite from one from birth, you know, being able to do that and being okay with it.
Because suddenly when you're when that is in your world, you're a little confused, and fear, I think, is at a lot of much of this.
It is.
Just that lack of understanding. So what you're saying is, if they want to use a pronoun, if it's a male transitioning to a female and they want to be referenced as her, respect that.
Yes.
A little bit of dignity and respect along the way.
Those basic skills we learn in kindergarten, you know, respect and politeness.
They really do apply. And then what about the getting informed? Is it, in your opinion, appropriate to open a dialogue with people maybe who are different than ourselves?
Yes, I think that's the best way to do it. I still learn from other people, getting different perspectives and worldviews, and talking to people who've lived through it and asking them questions. A lot of them want to share their experiences. So being willing to actually have the conversation and not having it where you're trying to form a rebuttal as they're talking, but actually being open to listen.
So Bruce Jenner, and in his conversion, is causing a conversation, but also race relations in America right now, between the police, you know, between black, white, just in general. It's like we've gone 2 steps forward, but then 5 steps backward. As you look at what's happening, you know, I mean, what can you say to people about opening the dialogue, about broadening horizons?
The first that is, it will be difficult. It's just, there's going to be discomfort when you have those dialogues, and being okay, lean into that discomfort. Because when you're uncomfortable, that means you're learning.
Lean into it. Lean into it. Okay.
That means you're learning. You know, just like lean into learning, you know, about research or math or things that are difficult. You lean into it. I'm just going to focus on it. I'm going to work hard and learn this information. Same thing when it comes to diversity. You do the same thing. You lean into it. You work hard. You try to get a good understanding, and be honest with yourselves. I was listening to NPR this morning, and they were talking about the race card project, and a young man whose name is Jamal, and he was talking about, even with names, how that could be diverse. And he's a white man, and he was saying how people assume that he's black because of his name, and how, you know, people treat him when he walks in. They realize that he's white. So something as simple as a name could be a part of the conversation. Are those types of projects, having an honest conversation on a national platform, like Starbucks tried to do, and there was a lot of backlash for that. But college courses, people can take courses. There's a lot of stuff online that you can read about diversity. So we can take active measures to learn more about diversity if we're interested.
And become a whole lot more competent.
Correct.
Indeed we can. Thank you for sharing that story with us. We've been talking with Dr. Monica Galloway-Burke. And that is going to wrap it up for this week's edition of Outlook. I'm Barbara Deeb. We're glad you joined us.